They called it the unthinkable, a move so shocking that even the most hardened crime reporters couldn't believe it was real. Shred of order, and now picture 150,000 cartel members, the most feared names in Mexico's underworld, dumped there overnight. No trials, no second chances, just pure chaos waiting to explode. From the very moment the gates slammed shut, the world gasped. Families of these men and women broke down in tears, while fans of cartel lore on social media couldn't stop buzzing about what might happen next. Would old rivals slaughter each other in a matter of days? Or would shocking alliances form in ways nobody could have predicted? Sources whisper that government officials knew exactly what kind of madness they were unleashing, and some even claim it was all part of a twisted experiment. One thing is certain: what unfolded on this so-called Hell Island is unlike anything Mexico or the world has ever witnessed. And tonight, we're pulling back the curtain on every betrayal, every power grab, and every bone-chilling moment that came after. The first night didn't feel like a night at all. It felt like a siren stretched across the sky, a humming that crawled under the skin and told everyone on that island the rules had been erased. No guards, no loudspeakers, only the ocean, the wind, and thousands of eyes learning the terrain before anyone dared to move. They called it Hell Island, rumor of splintered wood and rusted bollards. Groups drifted there in cautious clusters, testing how close they could stand before someone reached for a blade. Old flags from old loyalties flashed in bandanas and bracelets, tiny signals that said "you're safe with me" or "you're already dead." Men who once shouted orders from bulletproof convoys now counted fish bones, trying to guess how many bodies the shoreline could swallow. Women who'd ferried messages and money kept their eyes down and their ears open, cataloging faces, voices, weaknesses. People think chaos is just noise. It isn't. It's a negotiation that never ends. The first clash came at the water's edge, a standoff over a half-rotten pier that promised boats someday. A wiry enforcer named Lobo stepped forward with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. He had scars he didn't bother to hide, and a voice that carried even when he whispered. "We take turns," he said. "Today for us, tomorrow for you." Not anymore. That was all it took. Not a gunshot, not a scream, just a refusal. The pier erupted into elbows and knees, knuckles cracking like dry wood. No one wanted to spill blood on the first night, but pride doesn't care about plans. When it was over, nothing had changed except the air. It felt heavier, like the island had taken a breath and decided to hold it. Outside the island, emotions ran high. The families left behind tried to track the shadows of their own. A sister named Sophia refreshed her phone until her thumb hurt, hoping for a message that wouldn't come. A mother in Sonora kept setting an extra plate at dinner, then putting it back in the cabinet. Fans of crime lore posted predictions and maps and shaky satellite screenshots, insisting they'd cracked the code of who would win. Some were giddy, others were sick. The country watched like it was a tournament, forgetting the tournament's end, and this had no finish line. By day 2, the island learned to sort itself. The old prison block on the hill became a fortress of pallets, wire, and stubbornness. Men dragged concrete slabs into doorways, women braided rope from fabric strips. Someone showed up with an ancient transistor radio that picked up more static than stations. But at night, they gathered around it anyway because the static sounded like company. Every group sent out scouts. Every scout lied about what they saw. Trust was a currency, and the exchange rate tanked before it ever stabilized. Into this came a name that didn't belong. Lara. She wasn't on the island. She was a voice that wrapped itself around the island from the outside. A journalist, or so she claimed. Her podcast posted a midnight episode titled The Experiment, and within an hour, it climbed the charts. She said she had contacts who said they had contacts, and fans were shocked at how much she seemed to know. She spoke softly, like a confidant. "Listen closely," she said. "It isn't just exile, it's observation. Patterns are being recorded. Alliances, betrayals, the way hunger changes a person's decisions. They're watching to see who adapts and who breaks." People argued in the comments. Some accused her of inventing drama, a faint mechanical buzzing that arrived with the wind and vanished when you tried to listen. On the third afternoon, a white crate washed ashore at low tide, sealed with a plastic band and stamped with a serial number that meant nothing to anyone. The beach crowded fast. A man with broken knuckles tried to pry it open with a piece of rebar. Another offered a rock. A woman pointed out a latch shaped like a trick. Inside, there were rations that tasted of cardboard, a coil of nylon rope, a handful of cheap knives, and a laminated sheet with small print that none of them bothered to read. It might as well have been a letter from God. The argument started before the lid hit the sand. Split it by needs, someone offered families first. The sick, the old. Split it by strength. Another said, who protects it, decides, who eats. There was a pause, a soft, dangerous silence. In that pause, Lobo stepped in again, not as a savior, not as a tyrant, just as a man who understood what fear does. We can fight now and lose half, he said, or we can hold this together until the next crate shows, if there is a next crate. And if there isn't, asked a woman with a rag tied around her wrist. Then we find a new plan, but we don't burn the first one on day 3. For a moment, the island exhaled. They sorted the knives, measured the rope with rough fingers, and parceled out the rations with a ritualistic seriousness that gave everyone the illusion of a system. Illusions matter. They're bridges you can walk for a while before you look down. Meanwhile, Laura released another episode. One voice note was a low whisper, breathy. And deliberate? You think they threw us away, the whisper said. But they didn't. They're taking notes. They want to see what a pack of wolves will do when the fences are paper. The audience split. Some said the clip was real and chilling. Others said the audio was staged. The debate took on a life of its own, drowning out a quieter question: why would anyone send supplies to a place meant to be a grave? On the 4th morning, the ocean went glassy, the horizon a thin blade of silver. A boy, no older than 7, stubble, eyes too old for his face, found a second crate snagged in the rocks where the tide licked the island like a warning. He didn't call out. He looked over both shoulders, checked the cliff for witnesses, and hauled it to a narrow cleft where gulls nested. He had been a driver before the island, not a fighter. Roots, how to avoid the gaze that searched for volunteers. Alone, he pried at the lid until his palms bled. The crate opened with a sigh. Inside were not rations. Inside were tools: a folding shovel, a small hand drill, a bundle of tarps, for sealed pouches of powdered electrolyte mix, and at the bottom, wrapped in oiled cloth, a metal cylinder with a threaded cap and no markings at all. His breath went thin. He closed the crate, teetered on the edge of whether to share, then decided to wait. You can't unshare a secret. He covered the crate with a tarp and a drift of broken shells and walked away like he had found nothing more interesting than a patch of shade, back at the hill. Arguments over leadership sharpened into accusations. Emotions ran high as old grudges surfaced, small slights inflated into unforgivable sins. A heavyset man named Torres slapped a tin cup off a table and watched it skitter. You'd think because you had rank on the outside. You have rank here, he said to Lobo. This place resets everything. Then reset, Lobo answered, calm beneath the sting, but reset with a plan. Your plan feeds your friends first. My plan feeds whoever stands watch while others sleep. The room prickled. A woman named Alina stepped between them. She used to keep books for a cousin's shop, digits and decimals, her safe place. Now she kept a list of who took what from the last crate, scribbled in charcoal on a scrap of cardboard. Order steadied her hands. We can test both ideas, she said. Share by shifts. If it fails, we admit it. If it works, we keep it. It was boring, reasonable, infuriating. That night, the boy with the hidden crate found Lara's podcast again through the contraband phone that moved camp to camp like a relic. He typed a message he never sent. Then he returned to the rocks and unscrewed the cap of the cylinder under the shelter of darkness. Inside, he found a scroll of plastic film etched with symbols and lines, not words he recognized. A diagram of something that looked like a lock or a hinge or a secret. He rolled it back up with fingers that trembled, threaded the cap on, and heard, for the first time, unmistakably, a mechanical hum above the wind. He pressed himself into the stones and watched the sky through a torn net of clouds. No lights, no silhouette, only the hair-raising certainty that something was there. When the sound faded, he stuffed the cylinder under his shirt and crawled inland. a shadow among shadows. The next morning brought a rumor louder than the gulls, claimed to have seen a small craft offshore at dawn. Low and dark against the shimmer, gone before anyone could summon witnesses. Others said that was ridiculous. If boats were coming, they'd have come already. Someone else swore they heard voices in the brush at midnight, speaking a dialect from a state no one admitted to. The island ran on rumors, every one of them, a spark in dry grass. By noon, the truce around the hilltop fractured. Torres's people took the western rooms, Lobo's people the eastern. The center hall became a no man's land, watched by two teenagers with broom handles they pretended were rifles. Alina drew a line on the floor with a piece of chalk stolen from a smashed schoolhouse on the southern slope. Everyone laughed at the silliness of it. No one stepped over Sophia, far away, stared at a photograph of her brother from a summer barbecue. Sauce on his knuckles, his smile, a slice of ordinary life. She listened to Lara's latest episode and wrote a comment she deleted twice before posting. If you're reading this, she typed, "Please tell my brother to look for the stars that line up like 3 buttons. That's where our father used to say to make a wish." The comment vanished beneath hundreds of others. Still, it lived there, inside the noise. A thread flung toward an island that had forgotten what wishing felt like. At sunset, the boy brought the cylinder to Alina. He didn't trust Torres or Lobo. Alina looked like someone who would read even the things that hurt to read. "I found this," he said. "Please don't ask where." She unrolled the film over the last clean table in the hilltop block and squinted. The diagram resolved under the dying light. Not a lock, not a hinge, a layout, tunnels, or channels, or routes, sketched beneath the island like veins. At the top, a notation in minuscule print, access points 3. Alina's throat went dry. The boy's fingers hovered above the map, not daring to touch. "If it's real," he said, "we aren't trapped the way they wanted us to be. Or we're trapped in a more complicated way." She answered. He glanced toward the door, toward the chalk line, toward the hallway where silence had replaced conversation. "Who do we tell?" he asked. Alina folded the film with the care of someone wrapping a newborn. Outside, the ocean darkened into a single sheet of ink. Somewhere above, something unseen circled and listened. Inside, 2 factions measured each other by the width of a chalk line, while a secret sat between them like a fuse waiting for a match. The second week began with a storm that tore across the island like a punishment. The ocean heaved, the sky cracked with thunder, and shelters built from tarps and driftwood scattered like paper. Rain poured into every crevice, flooding the prison block until the chalk line Alina had drawn dissolved into a gray smear. People huddled together, enemies crouched side by side under scraps of metal roofing, clinging to survival while the storm howled. For a brief moment, violence drowned beneath the weight of weather. No one cared about turf or symbols, only about breathing through the wind that threatened to rip the very island apart when the sun returned. The island looked reborn and ruined at once. Fires smoldered in wet ash, camps lay flattened, and bodies washed up on the shore tangled in seaweed. Survivors staggered from hiding places, blinking against the sudden calm. Silence pressed heavy, broken only by the groan of shifting debris. Lobo walked the shoreline, water dripping from his clothes, his expression unreadable. Torres's men had scattered since his death, leaderless and bitter. Some joined smaller factions, others wandered like ghosts. The storm had changed the landscape, but it had also erased boundaries, and for a moment, there was opportunity in the ruins. The boy carried the cylinder beneath his shirt, the edges bruising his ribs. He searched the cliffs for the hidden crate, terrified the storm had dragged it into the sea. Instead, he found it wedged deeper in the rocks, sealed tight. Relief almost buckled his knees. He sat there, staring at it, rain dripping from his hair, and whispered to himself that maybe fate hadn't abandoned him after all. He didn't believe in fate, not really, but sometimes a lie was easier to live with than the truth. Inside the prison block, Alina spread the map on a slab of concrete. The storm had blurred some of the lines, but the tunnels still glowed faintly under the candlelight. She traced the paths again, her mind racing. If the access points were real, they could lead underground, maybe even beyond the island. Yet doubt gnawed at her. Why would anyone give prisoners the blueprint to freedom, unless freedom wasn't what waited at the end? She folded the map and tucked it away as footsteps echoed in the hall. Lobo entered, dripping, his followers trailing behind. He stopped when he saw Alina with the map, his gaze narrowing. "You've been busy," he said softly. She held her ground, her voice steady. "I keep records. Someone has to." He studied her for a long moment, then smiled without humor. Records are power, and power attracts blood. Before she could reply, he turned away. But the warning lingered like smoke in the air. Outside the island, news of the storm hit social feeds before the government acknowledged it. Grainy satellite images showed dark clouds swirling over the Pacific. Fans dissected every pixel, convinced they saw shapes in the waterships, submarines, rescue craft. Conspiracy forums claimed the storm had been engineered, a test to see how far the prisoners could be pushed. Families demanded answers, pleading for updates, but officials remained silent. Whispers grew louder. Maybe no one was meant to survive at all. The boy returned to Alina that night, eyes wide. "We have to try the tunnels," he said. She shook her head. "Not yet. If we tell them now, they'll tear each other apart before we take a single step." He clenched his fists. "If we wait, we could die here." Her voice dropped to a whisper. "And if we rush, we'll never know if the tunnels lead out or deeper in." The argument ended in silence, but the decision hung heavy between them. Tensions rose again as the camps rebuilt. Factions fought over dry wood, over scraps of food salvaged from the storm. Accusations flew: who poisoned the water, who set the first fire, who whispered to the drones above. Emotions ran high, and fear festered into rage. One night, 2 men were found hanging from a beam in the prison block, their bodies marked with the same strange symbol carved into the first corpse. Panic spread like wildfire. People claimed an old cartel faction had risen from the dead. Others swore the government planted infiltrators. Trust evaporated, replaced with paranoia so thick it choked every conversation. Alina wrote the names of the dead on her list, her hands shaking. The boy leaned against the wall, watching her. "How long before they turn on us?" he asked. She didn't answer. Instead, she looked at the folded map hidden beneath her clothes and thought about the tunnels waiting in the dark. Above, the buzzing of unseen drones returned, louder now, as if the sky itself was listening. The island had survived the storm, but something deeper had shifted. The prisoners weren't just fighting each other anymore. They were fighting the shadows of secrets none of them fully understood. The killings marked a turning point. Before, violence had been messy, random, like sparks leaping from a fire. Now it was ritual. Every corpse carried the same mark, carved with precision, displayed where everyone would see. Fear mutated into obsession. Men whispered about ghosts, about old enemies returned from graves. Women clutched scraps of cloth-like talismans, praying to gods they hadn't named in years. The island had become more than a prison, it was a stage, and someone was directing the play from the shadows. Lobo tried to steady his followers with calm speeches, telling them symbols meant nothing without the hands that carved them. But doubt gnawed his words. His closest lieutenants began questioning whether he was involved, whether he knew more than he said. One night, as they huddled around a small fire, a man accused him outright. "These marks follow you," the man hissed. "Maybe you brought them." Lobo's jaw tightened, but instead of striking, he simply turned away. His restraint unsettled them more than violence ever could. Silence was heavier than any blade. Alina, meanwhile, studied the map each night with the boy at her side. The tunnels haunted her thoughts. She imagined walls lined with damp stone, air heavy with salt, passages twisting beneath the island like veins. Sometimes she swore she could hear faint echoes rising from the ground, as if the tunnels themselves were breathing. The boy begged her to act, his eyes bright with desperation. "We can't wait forever," he pleaded. "Every day, more die. If there's a way out, we have to try." She wanted to believe him, but fear of the unknown held her still. Beyond the island, the outside world was captivated. Social feeds pulsed with speculation. Fans posted grainy maps, drawing lines and circles, claiming to predict which faction controlled which part of the island. Families watched in agony, clinging to rumors that their loved ones were still alive. Commentators debated morality. some calling Hell Island a necessary evil, others condemning it as state-sanctioned slaughter. Conspiracy theorists swore the symbols carved into bodies matched secret government insignias, proof that officials weren't just watching but manipulating events. The more silence officials maintained, the louder the theories grew. Then came the first alliance. Remnants of Torres's men, desperate and angry, approached Lobo under a banner of surrender. They offered strength in numbers, swearing loyalty in exchange for food and protection. Lobo accepted, not out of trust, but necessity. Alina watched from the shadows as the two groups merged. Uneasy, but bound by survival, she scribbled new names onto her list, her charcoal smudging as her hands shook. The boy leaned close and whispered, "When they find out about the tunnels, they'll kill us first to claim them." She nodded, heart pounding. Secrets were daggers. One slip, and the blade would turn inward. The next crate arrived at dawn. Drifting ashore like a gift from gods who enjoyed games, this time it held not food, but weapons. Machetes, crowbars, lengths of chain. The island erupted in chaos. Factions fought over the crate, blood splattering across the sand. Men roared, women screamed. Children huddled in corners they carved for themselves. When it was over, Lobo's alliance stood battered but victorious, clutching the weapons like relics. Alina watched from the hilltop, bile rising in her throat. "They want us to kill each other faster," she whispered. The boy stared at the cylinder, pressed against his ribs, wondering if the tunnels were truly escape routes or another trap designed to test desperation. That night, Lara's voice returned. In another podcast episode, smoother and darker than before. "You're watching an experiment," she said to her listeners. "They want to see how far humanity bends before it breaks." The weapons weren't a mistake, they were an invitation. Fans flooded the comments with outrage and awe. Some swore Lara was fabricating for fame. Others insisted she had inside sources, but no one could stop listening. Every word tightened the grip of suspense. Back on the island, paranoia exploded. Some claimed the weapons came from the government. Others swore rival cartels smuggled them in to tip the balance. Fights broke. Out in the night, machetes clashing, screams tearing through the darkness. The boy clutched the cylinder, praying no one would discover it. Alina pressed her hands over her ears, rocking in the corner, her list abandoned for the first time. Survival had devoured order by dawn. Dozens lay dead. Their bodies bore no new symbols, only wounds carved by steel. Yet whispers spread that the marked killers still walked among them, waiting for the next strike. Lobo stood before his fractured alliance, blood streaking his face, and declared, "If we don't control this island, it will consume us." But even as he spoke, doubt flickered in his eyes. Control was an illusion, one that slipped further away with every heartbeat and beneath the earth. Silent tunnels waited their secrets untouched, their shadows listening. The killings did not stop after the weapons arrived. If anything, the blades sharpened more than steel. Mistrust cut deeper than any wound, carving the island into jagged pieces of suspicion. Every camp looked over its shoulder, waiting for betrayal. Food grew scarce, water turned brackish, and yet it was not hunger that consumed them. Most it was fear of each other. At night, the fires burned low, not for warmth, but as signals, faint glimmers that said, "We're still alive, we're still here, don't come closer." Alina kept her folded, map hidden in the lining of her shirt. She slept with her body pressed against the wall, one hand always over her chest. The boy stayed close, guarding her secret as though it were his own heartbeat. Together they whispered about the tunnels, but neither dared speak too loudly, for walls on the island had ears, and secrets traveled faster than footsteps. He begged her again and again to show him where the access points were. "If we wait, they'll find it without us," he whispered. "Then we'll be trapped with no way out." She shook her head. "Knowledge is power. Power gets you killed." Still, her eyes lingered on the map long after sleep should have claimed her. Outside the island, Sophia's desperation deepened. She posted videos every night, pleading with anyone who had a contraband phone to tell her brother that the 3 stars in the sky were their signal. Her voice cracked, her hands shook, but she kept recording. Fans began sharing her clips, some mocking, others moved. Hashtags grew, threads multiplied. until strangers around the world whispered about the girl searching for her brother in the silence of Hell Island. Governments ignored her cries, but ordinary people listened. Sometimes that was louder than authority. On the island, Lobo's alliance strained under its own weight. Men argued over rationed scraps. Women hoarded water in hidden jars. One morning, 2 followers vanished. By nightfall, their bodies were found in the cliffs, throats slit, eyes wide with terror. Carved into the rock above them was the same symbol as before, etched deep, dripping with their blood. Panic surged. Factions accused each other. Voices rose to screams. Machetes gleamed in the firelight. Lobo tried to calm them, but his words dissolved in the storm of suspicion. The boy tugged Alina's sleeve, whispering urgently, "If we don't leave now, we'll be the next bodies they hang." She looked at the chaos and saw he was right. Yet fear chained her tighter than stone. Then a discovery shattered the fragile balance. A group scavenging near the eastern cliffs stumbled on a tunnel mouth half hidden behind tangled roots and collapsed stone. They dragged torches into the darkness, shouting triumphantly, their voices echoing in the hollow earth. News spread like wildfire. Every camp surged toward the cliffs, eyes blazing with hunger for freedom. Lobo pushed through the mob, demanding control of the entrance, claiming his men would guard it for the good of all. But others refused, voices overlapping in a frenzy. Accusations turned to blows, blows to blood. The tunnel became a battleground. Before a single step was taken inside, Alina and the boy stayed at the edge, watching the madness unfold. She clutched the hidden map, realizing the access points were real, yet now tainted with violence. "They'll tear each other apart before they take 10 steps, she whispered. The boy's eyes glimmered with a mixture of terror and hope. "Then we go ourselves. Tonight, before anyone else can." She hesitated, torn between survival and the weight of the secret she carried. But the roar of fighting behind them pushed her toward his choice. That night, under the cover of chaos, they crept back to the cliffs. The entrance loomed like a wound in the earth, black and silent. The boy lit a stub of candle, shielding the flame with his hand. Together, they slipped inside, the air damp and cold, the walls sweating with salt. The sound of the sea echoed faintly. But beneath it was something stranger, a low hum, mechanical, steady, like the heartbeat of a machine buried in stone. They froze, hearts racing. "They're watching even here," Alina whispered, her voice trembling. "This was never escape. It was a test." The boy clutched the cylinder tighter, his breath ragged. Then Los passed behind them. The island roared with another wave of slaughter. Factions clashed, blood spilled, symbols marked the fallen. Drones circled overhead, their hum blending with the screams, recording every second, and in the tunnels, 2 shadows pressed deeper. Into the dark, carrying a secret the Watchers had never meant to be discovered. The island was meant to be a grave, but sometimes graves are where revolutions begin. The tunnels swallowed them whole. Alina and the boy walked bent under low stone ceilings, their candle flame trembling against walls streaked with moisture. Each step echoed like a drumbeat, reminding them that even silence had weight here. The deeper they moved, the stronger the hum became, no longer faint, but pulsing, steady, mechanical. It was not the sound of earth or ocean. It was the sound of something built. The boy clutched the cylinder, knuckles white. "They made this," he whispered, voice trembling. "It wasn't chance. It wasn't ruins. This was designed." Alina nodded, though her throat had closed around fear. Her fingers brushed the folds of the map hidden beneath her shirt. Every line now felt deliberate. Not a mistake, but a plan. The question clawed at her. Who was the plan for the prisoners? Or the Watchers above? After an hour, they reached a chamber. Torches burned in iron brackets already lit. Alina froze. "Someone's been here." Her words barely left her lips before a voice drifted from the shadows. "You think you were the first." 3 figures emerged from the dark, faces gaunt, eyes glittering with hunger and paranoia. One carried a chain wrapped tight around his fist, another a sharpened pipe. The last, nothing but a smile that cut sharper than any blade. The smiling one stepped closer. "We found these tunnels days ago. We've been waiting to see who else would come sniffing around." The boy raised the cylinder like a weapon, though it was nothing more than metal and secrets. "Stay back," he warned. The men laughed, the sound jagged, echoing too loud in the chamber. "You don't even know what you're holding," the smiling man said. "But we do. It's a key, a gift. Proof we're not prisoners, we're subjects." Alina's stomach dropped. Subjects, the word rang with truth, too sharp to deny. This wasn't exile, it was observation. The island wasn't just hell, it was a lab. The confrontation snapped like dry wood. Chains swung, the pipe slashed, the boy lunged. The candle blew out in the struggle, plunging the chamber into blackness. Echoes of grunts, shouts, metal on stone filled the dark. Alina scrambled, fumbling for the map, desperate not to lose it. In the chaos, the boy's voice cut through. "Run." She bolted down a side passage, hands scraping the walls, lungs burning. Behind her, the sounds of struggle echoed. Then, a scream short, raw, silenced too soon. Her legs carried her farther than she thought possible, fear pushing her faster than breath. She didn't stop until the hum grew deafening, filling her bones with vibration. The passage opened into a cavern lit, not by fire, but by machines. Metal towers hummed with blinking lights, cables snaked across the floor, and drones rested in neat rows like predators sleeping with one eye open, staggered forward, heart pounding. It was real. The watchers weren't circling above by chance, they had a base inside the island itself. She pressed against a wall, watching as figures in dark uniforms moved between the machines. Not prisoner soldiers, they adjusted controls, monitored, screens that showed live feeds of the island's camps, bodies lying in sand, fires burning, machetes raised. Every fight, every betrayal, every scream had been broadcast and analyzed. The island wasn't just containment, it was performance. And the world outside, hungry for drama, had been watching without even knowing. Alina's eyes stung with rage. The prisoners weren't villains here. They were pawns, thrown into an arena while governments played gods in the shadows. She gripped the map, its edges damp with sweat, and swore she would find a way to reveal the truth. But the hum grew louder, and one of the soldiers turned his eyes, scanning the darkness. Alina pressed herself into the stone, breath shallow, praying the shadows would hold her. She thought of the boy, of Sophia posting desperate pleas, of families. Watching in silence, she thought of the bodies marked with symbols, of drones circling like vultures, of a world that pretended not to know. She thought of Hell Island not as a prison, but as a mirror, showing just how far power would go when unchecked. The soldier's gaze lingered, then drifted away. Alina slipped deeper into the dark, clutching the map like a lifeline. Somewhere, above, factions slaughtered each other for crates of weapons and scraps of food. Somewhere below, governments harvested data from their suffering. And caught in between, one woman carried a secret that could burn the whole experiment to a shift. She survived long enough to tell it. The tunnels stretched endlessly, every turn a choice between survival and discovery. Alina walked on, her footsteps swallowed by the hum, her resolve hardening with each beat. Hell Island had been designed to break them, but she would not break. She would bear witness, and when the truth finally reached the world beyond the waves, fans would not just be shocked, they would be horrified at what their silence had allowed. And in that horror, maybe, just maybe, the island would lose its power. Alina wandered deeper into the labyrinth of machines until the hum of generators became a rhythm in her skull. Her body ached, her clothes clung damp against her skin, but her eyes stayed sharp. Every screen she passed showed another angle of the island. Above docks turned to fortresses, cliffside camps lit with torches, factions clawing at one another over scraps. She saw Lobo's face, weary but unbroken, as he rallied survivors with steady words. She saw children crying in corners, too small to understand that they had been thrown into an experiment. And she saw the symbols again, painted fresh in blood, proof that whoever carved them had not yet finished. She ducked behind a console as a pair of soldiers passed, their boots clanging on the grated floor. "Command says, we intervene tonight," one muttered. Again, the other replied, "Balance is already tipping. If Lobo's side wins outright, the data collapses. Orders are orders. We call the strong, feed the weak, keep the war eternal." Their voices faded, but their words burrowed into her chest like nails. Balance, datacol, she realized. Then that the crates, the storms, Even the tunnels weren't chance, they were levers pulled to keep chaos. Alive, she pressed her forehead to the cold stone and let a whisper escape her lips. We were never meant to escape. The boy's absence gnawed at her. She didn't know if he had survived the clash in the tunnels, if his last scream had been swallowed for good. The cylinder still pressed against her ribs like a second heart, but it felt heavier without his hopeful eyes urging her forward. Meanwhile, above ground, Lobo's uneasy alliance fractured again. One of his lieutenants betrayed him, sneaking into the supply stores and stealing half the weapons from the last crate. By dawn, they found the man strung up on the prison wall, his chest carved with the same old symbol. Panic spread. Some accused Lobo of orchestrating it. Others believed an unseen faction stalked them in the night. Fear curdled into rage. Machetes gleamed, and once more the island screamed. Sophia watched the chaos through leaked clips on underground feeds. Her voice broke. As she recorded another plea, "If you're alive, please, look for the 3 stars. They're our sign. They're home." Tears stained her face, but she posted it anyway. Strangers shared her words, turning her grief into a chorus. The world was beginning to suspect the truth that Hell Island wasn't about justice. It was about control. Back in the tunnels, Alina discovered a narrow stairwell leading upward. Each step groaned as though warning her back, but she climbed anyway. The stair ended at a hatch. She pushed, and cool night air rushed in. She emerged onto a rocky outcrop overlooking the camps below. From here, she could see everything: the fires, the barricades, the bogies, and above it all, the drones, their lights flickering like false stars. For the first time, she saw what the prisoners could not. The entire island as a chessboard, every camp a piece moved by unseen hands. Rage boiled in her chest. She thought of Sophia's pleas, of the boys' whispered hope, of the families left behind. She thought of the soldiers beneath the earth, recording, analyzing, feeding off the carnage. "You turned us into your theater," she spat into the wind. "But the world will know." Her words vanished into the night, but her resolve hardened. She would find a way to bring the truth to light, even if it cost her life. She would not let Hell Island remain only a story told by the powerful dot behind her. The hatch creaked, boots scraped on the stone. A soldier's voice cut through the darkness. "Step away from the edge." Alina turned slowly, the map clutched in one hand, the cylinder in the other. The soldier's rifle gleamed in the moonlight. Yet, for the first time since arriving on the island, she felt no fear. She felt purpose. "You can kill me," she said, her voice steady, "but the truth is already out there. The families know. The world is watching. And when they learn what you've done here, no wall, no tunnel, no machine will protect you." The soldier hesitated, finger tight on the trigger. The night held its breath below. The camps roared again as another battle ignited above. Drones circled like vultures. And on the cliffside, a single woman stood defiant. Clutching the proof that Hell Island was never about survival, was about spectacle. Whether she lived or died, the experiment was already cracking. And in the cracks, something far more dangerous than fear was beginning to grow. From the very first moment, Mexico's so-called Hell Island was whispered into existence. The world has been hooked. Every rumor, every leaked clip, every hushed voice note painted a picture of chaos so raw it felt impossible, and yet it spread like wildfire. Families begged for news, fans debated every detail, and governments stayed silent, letting the noise build until no one knew where fact ended and spectacle began. We've seen leaders like Lobo trying to hold together a crumbling alliance. We've watched Alina clutch her map as though it was the last truth left. And we've heard Sophia's desperate cries echo across the internet, begging her brother to look up at 3 stars in the sky. Emotions ran high, betrayals cut deeper than knives, and the line between survival and manipulation blurred until the entire world questioned. Who was really in control of the cartels fighting in the dirt, or the unseen hands above feeding chaos to keep the war alive? And here's the part that leaves everyone unsettled. If even half of these reports are true, what does it say about us? Are we watching justice unfold, or a theater of cruelty staged for data and control? Fans are shocked, families are divided, and the silence from those in power speaks louder than any denial ever could. But one thing is certain: Hell Island, real or imagined, has become a mirror. It reflects the hunger for spectacle, of forgotten families, and the terrifying ease with which human lives can be turned into experiments. What do you think? Is this the future of warfare, or the darkest rumor of our time? Let us know in the comments. Don't forget to like this video, hit subscribe, and ring the bell so you never miss the next deep dive. Your voice matters here, because the world is still asking who truly controls the island and whether the story has really ended.